for joining in. And I'd like to say a very special thank you to our dear panelists. Thank you so much for accepting our invitations, and to everyone that has joined us online. We are happy that you're joining in. Please do let us know in the chat room where you are joining us from, so that we can keep the conversation going. Now, we do have our social media channels. Twitter is at PDPOUG, and LinkedIn is PDPO, our Personal Data Protection Office, Uganda. Please do follow us, do chat your nuggets, the good things that come out of this conversation, the highlights, and share them with us on our social media channels. We'll be very happy to continue this conversation with you on the channels. Now, before we go further, I'd like to give us the rules of engagement for the online audience. If you have any questions and answers, please do put them in the Q&A section of the webinar. And if you have any comments, please do put them in the chat as well, so that we can continue the conversation. Thank you so much for everyone that is joining in and letting us know where they're joining in from. I see, of course, my fellow Ugandans, and then I see our participants from Kenya, Nairobi. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Angela Tugume, and I'm the Manager, Data Protection Affairs at the Personal Data Protection Office here in Uganda, and I'll be your host today. Now, before we begin our webinar, on a sad note, as you may all be aware, we lost our Governor, Central Bank of Uganda, Professor Emmanuel Tumusime Mutebire. And so I'd like us to take a moment of silence to honor his life and legacy, if you may. Thank you very much. Thank you, and may his soul rest in eternal peace. Okay, so now we begin our webinar. This week we are celebrating the Data Privacy Week, and we have a host of webinars running from Monday today up to the Data Privacy Day on the 28th. And so this is our very first inaugural webinar. This is a very first webinar that is coming to you from the Personal Data Protection Office as an office as well, but also for the Data Privacy Week. Now, allow me invite our host, the National Director, Personal Data Protection Office, Ms. Stella Alibatese, to welcome us to this webinar. Stella, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Angela. Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited that you're all here. As already indicated by Angela, today we are starting off our Data Privacy Week. Globally, the 28th of January is a day when the entire world celebrates Data Privacy Week. As Uganda, given that our office has just started, we are just starting to implement our laws. Some of the questions we get when we talk to you, especially the Ugandans, about privacy and data protection, many of you will ask, how important is this for me? With all our problems, is data privacy or data protection or privacy important to us? So we thought in celebrating the Data Privacy Day would also bring Uganda, or would bring Africa to Uganda. And to do that, we are joined by the president of the Network for Africa Data Protection Authorities, Mrs. Patricia Adusei Poku. Thank you so much, Patricia, for joining us and for agreeing to speak to us. We look forward to that address. In addition to Mrs. Poku, we have a panelist from Nigeria, because as we know, West Africa was much faster in adopting these laws. We have Mr. Femi Daniel Esquire, who also serves as the Vice Chair for the African Union Working Group on the harmonization of data protection laws. You're welcome, Femi, to this webinar. We also have my sister, Immaculate Kasait, who is the Data Protection Commissioner in Kenya. Welcome, welcome. Karibu sana. You know, Ugandans, we struggle with Swahili. Karibu, karibu, karibu. So we are so happy to be here. And of course, we do have, we'll later have some video remarks from our sister, Mrs. Madub, who is the Data Protection Commissioner in Mauritius. I look forward to this conversation. I thank all the panelists for joining us, and I thank you all participants. Please, please, please spread the word so that we all get to know what is happening in terms of privacy in Africa. Thank you very much, Angela.
Thank you very much, Stella, for that very, very warm welcome. I hope our panelists and attendees have actually felt the warmth in your warm remarks. Now, dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to announce, to introduce to us, Ms. Patricia Adusei Poku, the Executive Director of the Ghana Data Protection Commission. She's also a seasoned privacy practitioner, program manager, information governance and risk experts in the public, private, and non-profit sectors globally. Patricia, some of Patricia's most recent appointments include the head of data protection at the London 2012 Olympic Games and global director for data protection and privacy at World Vision International. Currently, Patricia is the co-chair with the UK ICO Commissioner, John Edwards, on the Common Thread Network of Commonwealth Data Protection Commissioners and the president of the Network of African Data Protection Authorities. Patricia holds a Master of Business Administration in Project Management and Consultancy, a Master in International Public Policy, a Bachelor's in Computing Science, and she's a Certified Information Privacy Manager, issued by a certificate that is issued by the globally recognized International Association of Privacy Professionals, IAPP. She's also a certified practitioner in European Union General Data Protection Regulation. And Patricia enjoys reading, traveling, and charity work. Patricia, you're very, very welcome to this webinar. We're excited. We are happy to have you as our main speaker, speaking to us about privacy in Africa. What are the challenges? What are the wins? Thank you very much. And please, the floor is yours. You're welcome.
Thank you so much for this elaborate introduction. And it always excites me to speak about privacy, especially in the African region. We've come a long way from even the last 2 years when there were only a few African countries with the Data Protection Act. Now we are over 30 countries, and I believe that it's only onwards and upwards for Africa. We are in a very privileged position compared to the rest of the world because we have the opportunity to learn from the global experience and also to ensure that we start on the right footing in Africa. We are particularly privileged to have the opportunity to start from a very a clean ground where there hasn't been other practices before this. So I believe Africa, if we put our heads together, we have a very good chance to set things straight. At the network level, the African Regional Network, we have also come a long way. And the new management, I took office last year, and we're making a lot of effort to bring the states of Africa together to form a unified front for the region where the protection of people's personal data and their privacy is concerned. We're making a lot of effort at the regional level to connect with all concerns in this effort. We are working with the African Human Rights Commission to make sure that privacy is seen as a fundamental human right, not just a right where countries decide on an individual basis on how to handle privacy. We are hoping that we will see it as a region as a fundamental human right. We're also working with those using the African region as a platform to enhance their digitization work. We are connecting very strongly with the groups such as Smart Africa, whose mandate from all our heads of states is to digitize the region, to ensure that we are working hand in hand with them to enable the use of technology in a positive way to ensure that there's proper safeguarding of personal data using technology and the implementation of appropriate organizational measures that protects individuals. So we are working closely with such external bodies in Africa. Internally in the Secretariat, we're bringing on board as many African countries as possible as members of the African network, and looking at those who are making positive efforts, such as countries with data protection acts in the pipeline to come, those who have laid a bill in Parliament, and those who are making positive effort to develop their act. We're working with them to bring them on board as observers and as soon as possible as full members of the network. Within the network, we want to encourage every state to have a voice, to be able to contribute effectively to the running of the network, and to also ensure that in their country they have the necessary support that they need to be able to effect the requirements of their act. It doesn't make sense to have one country successfully implementing data protection whilst its neighbors haven't been able to succeed. I think the more we stick together, the more we work together, the stronger we become as a region to have a voice in the global land. For a few years ago, I spoke in Europe and I expressed the fact that Africans have a voice in the global discourse of data protection, and we want to use it. And as a result of that, we've had panels open for us in global conferences where now there's a proper focus on Africa and what we are doing with data protection and privacy. It particularly excites me that countries such as Uganda are beginning to pick up their aspect of the effort and are beginning to work to ensure that their citizens are protected. It is exciting to see how many countries are on that path and making the effort now. This assurance from the network is that we support every country that needs to get our support to be able to deliver successfully. We are at the early stage where we are putting systems in place to be able to offer even better effort to our members to support you with the delivery of the mandates that you have at the state level. Every country in Africa is responsible for their own data protection and privacy. And we hope that soon, maybe by this time next year, all the 54 countries in Africa would have passed their data protection rules. So we can really look at how we effect a regional scale safeguarding of personal data. Some of the ways we are working is to connect with the African Union, see how the regional convention for data protection is being addressed, which is our Malabo Convention for Data Protection and Privacy. We're working together, as I mentioned, with Smart Africa and the African Union in the effort to harmonize the rules in Africa. We found very early on that there are different interpretations of the Data Protection Act in different states, and it's presenting for us a complication when it comes to some aspects of delivering our mandates, such as the cross-border processing of data protection, the deliverance of our mandate around what we mean by national identification, the national digitization effort. If we're doing things differently, it's going to throw a challenge to us. And so we are at the beginning of trying to find a standardized way of delivering this data protection effort. Some of the areas we're working on right now is not just purely the traditional protection of data, but we're looking at having a regional artificial intelligence strategy that the Smart Africa is working on. Ghana is already delivering a state level mandate. Ghana is also delivering the ethical strategy for mass processing of data. We're looking to be able to replicate this across the region once we establish it. We're also looking at the data governance standardized across the region. These are important aspects of our work. If we don't set the pace as professionals in the ecosystem as to how policies should be set or what policies institutions must have in order to ensure the proper safeguarding of data, we're going to end up with a very difficult complication. And so we're working on data governance standards around how to collect and establish data policies across the region to roll it out and ensure that we are all singing from the proverbial song sheet. We hope that countries represented here and in the network are going to really support each other to accept these unified front and the effort.
Patricia, you're muted. I think you pressed it by mistake.
Oh, I hope it hasn't been from the beginning.
No, just
okay,
a few minutes.
Thank you. So I was saying that we hope that we can join this unified effort to deliver a standardized program for Africa. Europe has come a long way. They were here as we are now 20 years ago, or even less, maybe 8 years ago. And we know that in 2018, they passed the GDPR, and now they are uniform in the way they're delivering data protection across Europe. We hope that in due course, Africa will be able to do something similar. We now are finalizing the harmonized program, and the network is keen to take up the flagship of the harmonized data protection rules for Africa, and to encourage its members to adopt the harmonized rules in the delivery of their mandate or in the development of new acts across the region. We hope that in celebrating the Data Protection Week, as you are doing in Uganda, we will push the general awareness to the members of the public, the people in the states that we are trying to protect. We will encourage people to assert themselves under the acts that we have. I hope that every authority represented here, speakers, are working to empower individuals. One thing we have as a culture in our region is that people don't have the culture of complaining or asserting themselves or holding institutions accountable. We want to, at this region, enable individuals to assert themselves, to challenge the status quo, so that we, the authorities, will be able to support them to deliver their rights. We also want to hold institutions accountable. And by holding institutions accountable, we want to also educate institutions to understand what it is that they need to be doing to comply with the law. We want a practical delivery of data protection in Africa. We want to standardize the education of professionals in the region. We want to be able to train professionals to a standardized level. And Ghana has started doing this, fortunately, with the knowledge we brought to Africa from Europe. I used to train data protection practitioners in Europe. And so we have created the European, African Speak. And right now we are trying to convert our training manual to align with the harmonized rules, so that everyone in Africa can get some training, as Ghana has been piloting to date. so that we can standardize our professional certification for our region, so that we have an African regional data protection certificate that we, all the countries in the network, can buy into, so that our professionals in the ecosystem can provide a service. When a professional is certified in the region, they can provide data protection as a service if they meet the criteria that we will set, and be able to deliver data protection as a service to the smaller institutions who cannot be reasonably expected to appoint a full-time data protection officer. So we are doing all of this to enhance the strength and the space of the ecosystem. So we are training individuals to professional standards who can be appointed. Obviously, there's a skills deficit between the global north and in Africa. And the global skills deficit is such that we cannot expect professionals to be appointed from Europe and other international countries to come and serve the ecosystem in Africa. So we are making every effort to create our own professionals in the region. And in due course, we want the heads of authorities of data protection to put our heads together and to standardize the professional qualification in Africa. In our next General Assembly of the network, we'll be talking about some of these things to agree on what the status should be, and to push for the education of professionals in our ecosystem, so that we can deliver the African specific data protection qualification that will enable the upskilling of our own people who understand our culture to deliver data protection according to the framework that we have developed, and to be able to support the ecosystem to deliver the reasonable expectation of the people in Africa. Programs such as what we are delivering today is critical, is crucial to the education of the public and to the empowering of institutions to be to choose to be accountable. We want a risk-based delivery of a practical solution to the data protection and privacy requirements of the region. And we count from the network level on institutions such as the Uganda Data Protection Authority to be doing and to be developing programs such as this. And we are excited because we have visibility now of what other countries are doing. We've seen programs from South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, and every other institutions that is part of the network. On the network platform, everyone's having some exciting programs in the data protection weekend. All of this is going to towards the education of Africa. We hope that next year we will do bigger things and to even promote even further some sort of standardized program for the region in the data protection week. I thank all of you for giving me your attention this morning, and to encourage you to push on, press on with the education of people and staff and institutions in the effort to improve the status of data protection and the safeguarding of personal data in our ecosystem. And we hope that this will be a successful program. I thank you for enabling me to be part of this program and to speak on this. And I hope that we have very, very successful deliberations that will enhance people's understanding and education on data protection and privacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patricia, for your remarks. I see quite a number of comments in the chat. Most participants are looking forward to the framework, harmonization framework for data protection and privacy in Africa that you talked about. And also the key thing is the collaboration, the fact that it's not enough for just a few African countries to have laws, but we need to have all of us, all the 54 African countries actually have data protection and privacy laws. And also the work that you're doing in making sure and in supporting those countries that still have a long way to go in enacting data protection and privacy laws. Thank you so much, Patricia. I'd like to ask our participants, if you have any questions for Patricia, please do put them in the Q&A as we move on to our next panelist. Thank you so much, Patricia, for honoring our invitation, and we'll continue the conversation. Thank you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Olufemi Daniel. Daniel, if you can just share your video, we'll be happy to see you. Yes, thank you, Daniel. Femi is a lawyer by training with passion for technology, data privacy, startups, open banking, and innovative regulations. Femi authored Witty Sayings and Quotes of Nigerian Judges in 2012 and Introduction to Computer Law in Nigeria in 2015. He was in-house counsel at System Specs, owners of Remita Software, until 2017. Femi has worked with NITIDA, the Nigeria Information Technology Development Agency. That's Nigeria's IT regulator, where he led the regulations monitoring and compliance team, and was also the desk officer for Nigeria Data Protection Regulation. Femi is currently the vice chair of African Union hosted Technical Working Group on Data Protection Harmonization in Africa. He was also the secretary of Nigeria's Virtual Currency Regulation Drafting Committee. Femi is a senior professional member of the Institute of Information Management and MIT Chief Data Officer. Now, Femi's work with NDPR, which he'll tell us more about, led to the creation of the new data protection sector in Nigeria, currently valued at 5.5 billion naira and employing over 7,600 Nigerians. He led 3 successful data breach investigations, and he has also authored the first and second Nigeria Data Protection Regulation Performance Reports in 2020 and 2021. He's recently co-published Data Protection in Nigeria, yes, that's his most recent publication. Femi, we are happy and glad to have you on board. Welcome to this webinar. Our next speaker is our immediate neighbor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Femi. Our next speaker is our immediate neighbor, Mrs. Immaculate Kasait, who is Kenya's first data commissioner. Immaculate has extensive experience in elections, governance, and women's rights, and has played a key role in the establishment of several projects, both in Kenya and abroad. In 2006, she was instrumental in setting up of the first domestic observation program for the Commonwealth Secretariat, while working at Institute for Education in Democracy. Also, from 2010 to 2020, Immaculate was the first female in charge voter registration, elections, and operations in charge. She saw the setting up and operation of electoral processes at both IEC and IEBC. In addition, she also served as the chairperson of the task force on development of the data protection regulations in 2021. Now, Ms. Kasait remains one of the 2 building resources in democracy, in governance and elections, accrediting experts in Kenya. In 2021, she was recognized amongst the top 25 women in digital in Kenya. She was awarded the Presidential Award Moran of the Burning Spear for her outstanding work in public service. And Immaculate continues to take part in several activities as part of her community work. Immaculate, thank you so much for joining us. We are excited and happy to have you on board. And
thank you.
Yes, and now I finally know what MBS means. Finally, thank you. So okay. I'll actually start off with you and get to know your thoughts about data privacy and data protection and privacy in Africa. Now, we know that privacy is not entirely, just a minute, sorry, my screen is misbehaving. We know that privacy is not entirely independent of economic, political, and technological forces within our countries, within our respective countries. Now, what we'd like to know is how are these factors affecting privacy in Africa, and how can data protection commissions address them effectively? You could share stories from your experience in Kenya and also from elsewhere in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Allow me to start by appreciating the Stella for organizing this. It's really a great honor to be here and to be able to bring different speakers from different parts of Africa, and particularly Patricia, who in the last couple of months as our president for the network on African Data Protection Authority, has really been instrumental and in actually getting data protection authorities to share the experiences, to make sure that everyone around Africa begins to appreciate what data protection is about. And we really do not take that for granted. Coming to why we are here today, the Data Privacy Week. And before I share our own experiences from Kenya in terms of those particular issues first, it's true that when we look at data protection, we cannot look at it in isolation, because many people say data protection, how do you protect data for an individual? And then aren't you then stifling innovation? How does it affect finance? I mean, how does it affect the economy? How does it affect the politics? How does it affect the social life? From a continental perspective, I have to say that we, in terms of trade in the economy, we have to, one most important thing, appreciate that globally, data protection, data has actually broken down boundaries. We can no longer say that you're working in isolation as an individual in Kenya and not expect to rely on perhaps another company in another different country. So basically, data or big data has broken down boundaries. That's one of the underlying issues we need to remember. And therefore, if it's broken down boundaries, what the flip side of that, it means that if we do not protect personal information, we could be exposing individuals to unlawful use of the information. And therefore, we could expose them to identity theft and to discrimination, because if this information is used in not a proper manner, it could be used to perhaps discriminate this person, because people could be using artificial intelligence to discriminate against them, and thirdly, and therefore leading to harm. Thus, as a continent, from a legislative perspective, which is one of the things that you'd want us to have a conversation around, it's important, therefore, to begin thinking, how then does the law help us to protect individuals? And from a continental perspective, how do we ensure that, for instance, a convention like Malabo, we have harmonized legislation across Africa, or at least that some that speak to each other, so that when we speak about protection of persons, around data protection, it's something that applies in Northern Africa, it applies in Sub-Saharan Africa, it applies in Western Africa, it applies in Southern Africa. So that is one of the issues. Two, so that it's important for us to think in terms of legislation, how then that helps us. Politically, of course, issues around data protection will require to have political will, because you can't implement legislation unless you have political will. So politically, we require political will across the continent, so that different countries are supporting initiatives by authorities across Africa as they embark on this journey of data protection. So political will then becomes an instrumental issue in us far as data protection is concerned. When it comes to the part around the economic issue, please let's remember that the African continent has what we call the African Continent Free Trade Agreement, which looks at a possibility of having a single digital market in Africa, and therefore promoting intra-Africa trade, which will see Africa state having a market of 1.2 billion. And I think Patricia has spoken to length about this, that we are looking for solution within Africa and how then best to promote trade. If you look at the intra-African trade, it is estimated to be 20 to 30%, with 70 to 80% being with non-African states. However, the success, therefore, of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is partly dependent on us harmonizing interoperability of the data protection laws in Africa. And therefore, why is that important? Like I said earlier, you will find many information crossing from one country to the other. If you're unable to push information from one country to the other, then it becomes difficult for you to be able to work in Africa. And therefore, just overemphasizing the part that it's dependent upon the organization, when they're transferring information, they make sure they are in harmony in as far as data protection regulations are concerned and laws, so that they do not have a limitation in as far as that is concerned. And then finally, on your questions on social, when it comes to matters social, we know issues around data protection are really treated as matters of human rights. And therefore, fundamental is to make sure that when we do data protection, when we do businesses or when we share information, we are doing it in an ethical manner, so that we are able to protect people around their privacy, so that we are no longer treating individuals as commodities. We are treating them as people who have dignity, people who have rights to whether how the information is used, and therefore protecting the long run their social rights in as far as the individuals are concerned. I think I'll stop there for now and then push it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Immaculate. And it still comes back to collaboration in Africa, but also the fact that the factors that you've mentioned, political will that needs to be there to implement regulations. There's something about social in Africa that I'll get back to you on, about the fact that as socially, we really don't, as individuals, we kind of don't value our privacy. We share numbers, we share data and information in anywhere and anyhow, and we're like, oh, we are one, village, so we can, talk to each other and just share information. So I'll get back to you on how that is being addressed. Thank you so much. I'll just quickly move over to Femi and ask him in his, Femi, in your experience working in Nigeria, one of Africa's biggest economies, what benefits have you seen in dealing with personal data for Nigeria, because it has the regulations, but also for other countries that you have experience in? What benefits have you seen with personal data for countries that actually have laws that protect data and privacy?
Thank you very much, and I hope you can hear me.
Oh yes, perfectly, loud and clear.
I want to really appreciate Madam Stella. I call her Immaculate and Madam Patricia Poku. They are my elder sisters on the continent. So, and they've been very fantastic people. I was just mentioning to my wife this morning that we have Amazons of data protection in Africa. So this is really a privilege and an opportunity for us to have these kinds of engagement. Now, without wasting much time, I would say that the narrative around data protection in Africa is changing, and it is changing for very good reasons. Like Patricia did mention, there had been a very dynamic shift in the last 2-3 years about data protection. Number one thing that we need to realize is that the number of professionals who are into data protection has more than doubled, more than 100%. I can tell you that for a fact from Nigeria. Before January 2019, when we issued the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, we had no body of knowledge or body of persons that can be regarded as data protection professionals. And when we were issuing the regulation, of course, we learned Ghana had a law since 2012, Senegal had had a law almost at the same time. We also learned some things from Europe and all that. We also studied the things that worked and the things that didn't work. We realized, number one, Africa was starting very late. When you look at the Convention 108, it had been issued since 1981. Some countries have been dealing with data protection and privacy over 100 years ago. So looking at that, we felt, how can we, bridge the gap? And one of the strategies of course, you cannot necessarily rewrite the principles, you cannot rewrite the rules. So we adopted the basic rules that are, that cuts across all the, that are similar across, but we put some strategies in place to help us bridge the gap. One of the strategies we put in place is that rather than, we actually licensed a body of persons we call data protection compliance organizations. And who are these people? These are, IT companies, professional companies like the KPMG, PwC, Deloitte, Anderson, some of the big professional firms. Most of them are on the list. And then we also have IT companies, we have law firms and all that. Now, we put a basic criteria. Those who are able to meet the basic criteria are licensed as data protection compliance organization. The strategy was, you go out and reach out to data controllers. We actually in Nigeria, the companies and the people that are potential data controllers are between the range of 3 to 5 million organizations. So it is impossible and impracticable for the Data Protection Authority to be able to cover the field or have enough staff and resources to cover the field. So by licensing these organizations, number one, they have been able to go out and engage. They have to do training for the organizations. They have to audit their data protection practices. We provided a set of 66 questions that that everyone needs to answer, and then they file their audit with us. So in the last 2 years, we have received 2 sets of audits. 2020, we had 635 organizations complying. And 2021, which is what we're just launching the reports this week, that we have had over 1,200, over 100% increase. And that is a very critical, knowledge base for us, particularly even for, and I believe the agency can open it up to researchers, which I've seen a lot of researchers on the call this morning, that we are now studying how data protection is impacting the organizations. Those who are into business, many of them are coming back because we do an annual survey and we ask questions. What is the implication of your compliance with data protection? Some of them are now using data protection as a business, supporting mechanism. You go to pitch for a bid, you say, I am compliant with this data protection law, I am compliant with this, and it is actually giving an edge to a lot of organizations. So we are now taking the idea of data protection from just focus on the data subject, but we're also trying to say that even for the data controller, this is a strategy that you need to adopt to continue maintaining your commercial edge. And one of the things that we're able to also implement is to also have the privacy mark. For all those who have complied, you can actually place a privacy mark on your website to say that I have complied for 2022 up till this time, and it is actually improving the idea of data protection and privacy. And also to also go back to some of the other things that have been done, and which, we're learning from the advanced jurisdictions in Africa. We're also learning the challenges, the mistakes, and trying to implement it in a better way. One of the things we also realized is that the idea of registering the data controllers is a fantastic idea, but mostly we see many organizations, it's just the big organizations that just like Facebook, the Google, that just go and pay maybe $1,000 or $2,000 and then they walk away. So we need, in Africa, we need a system to get the information that we can, as data protection authorities, we can use to be able to effectively engage these other data controllers, data processors, and data subjects. Yeah, and also one of the things that happened last year was the tweet. We had a challenge with Facebook and Twitter. At the African level, because I sit as the vice chair of the technical working group, we had an engagement with Facebook about the updates on their WhatsApp privacy policy. And I'm very proud and impressed with the response. We banded together and there was a pushback against against the big tech. And that template was also adopted by Nigeria when we engaged with Twitter. And I'm happy and proud to mention that I was the legal lead for our engagement with Twitter, and we're able to get some concession out of Twitter because of some of the experiences that we have had. So to just summarize, we have a lot to benefit by cross-fertilizing ideas. We have a lot to gain from learning from each other. Uganda does not need to repeat the mistake that Nigeria had made, and Nigeria does not need to repeat the mistake that Ghana has made. We have very fantastic, motherly and very wonderful people across the continent that are willing, able, and ready to share ideas, share knowledge, and we should continuously engage ourselves to develop ourselves better. I would say that this year for Africa is the year of data protection, and I'm glad with what is happening in Uganda. Even though I'm in transition out of the Nigerian authority, but I planned what we're doing this week, and it's a very elaborate program. And Madam Patricia had been, I would say that she spoke, I think Nigeria was the first country she spoke since she was inaugurated. She spoke to all our data protection officers, and they had a very fantastic impression of her. And I can tell you that we have the resources here, we have the knowledge here, we have the experience, we have the cultural understanding to be able to drive this data protection in such a way that is scalable, profitable, and understandable to our people. So we do not need to always look out of the window for who will help us outside. We have enough resources within the continent to be able to do these things, and I'm sure we are going to get it right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Femi. And I think as you were speaking, I was drawn to the fact that there's actually a lot of benefits for businesses that comply with data protection and privacy laws for them, that gives them an edge because they comply with that. And then the privacy mark is also a great idea. And of course, we all agree with you, Daniel, that we have enough resources in Africa to get us to do what we want. So I'll just take up some questions from the participants. I'll come back to you, Immaculate. And the question here is, how can we align our African Ubuntu theory with data protection? Is it possible in any way?
Yes. It's possible. I thank you for the question on translating or making theory becomes actually practical. And I think Femi has spoken to it. One of the, although the question, I would be happy to know specifically what are the issues that would want to make it a reality. But going back to the theme of the meeting around the economic, political issues, how do we make that practical? I think it's important for us. One is sharing of ideas across the continent, because when one issue could have been very, very controversial in West Africa, perhaps East Africa has found a solution. So that is one of the things, cross-border sharing of ideas. And also two, pushing it at a continental level. When you get more countries to ratify the convention or harmonize legislation, it means at that level, very high level of the the highest political representation in the continent, you're beginning to create one awareness on what data protection is. You're beginning to hold accountable to the holders of those offices at that continental level. And therefore, you're beginning to look at data protection no longer as a theory, as a practical issue. The third thing is to break down data protection as a very simple issue. And I'll now perhaps address your concern earlier on the social, how we as Africans like to share information. If you speak in abstract data protection to a layperson in the street, they may not understand. But if you ask them, the last time you walked into a laundry shop and they asked you basic questions, what did you tell them, for instance? I'm just now trying to demonstrate how from theory we can make it practical. And when you're having that conversation, one with the data subject or the person going to that laundry shop, two with the data controller or processor, the person collecting that information and the one determining how that information is. Do you need to ask me about my marital status if I am going to a laundry shop? Of course not. You just need to have basic information about who I am and how I'm using the information. So that's another way of simplifying data protection to very practical issues and how they affect people around the continent on a day-to-day basis. Looking at it from that theory of unpacking with a data controller to a data subject to simple things that affect their lives. That way, they will ask themselves, why do I need to share my personal information the next time somebody asks from them that information? And what are you going to use that information for? And indeed, if you're going to share that information with a third party, you need to tell me or seek my own consent as far as that is concerned. So awareness creation is one of the most important things for making sure that data protection is moving away from theory to practical, so that we are being able to ask people to appreciate what is in it for them. I don't know, at the end, you'll give me time to also share some of our experiences in Kenya.
Yes, I'll definitely do that. Okay. Thank you so much. Right. Yes, and I'll just quickly move on. I have a funny story about being asked for information that is irrelevant. And the person asking for that information actually had no idea that they really didn't need that information, but that's a story for another day. So I'll jump quickly to our host, Stella. Stella, we have a question for you. The question is, NITA Uganda recently effected the Data Protection and Regulatory Act. What I believe that the general public, and a few institutions are not aware of this or even don't know how implementations are done. So how is NITA, I think in this case, your office, Stella, strategizing in these implementations, and is there any institution currently training interested individuals to specialize in this? So Stella, over to you for a quick answer.
Thank you very much for that question. We are doing a lot. Of course, webinars like this are also intended to raise awareness. This entire week, we have a number of webinars on privacy and innovation, on privacy in the digital age. Our theme for this year is Your Privacy Matters. These are ways these are measures that we are taking to increase awareness. As an office, we've published articles in newspapers. We have been on radio. We have been on TV to raise this much needed awareness. We see some progress, especially in terms of the data controllers and data processors, complying with the law, for instance, by registering with the office. Right now, following some of the measures we put in place, we are processing about 480 applications for registration. From, I think when we started that campaign, we had about 18 organizations that had submitted their applications. There's a lot that we need to do. As you are aware, we only started in August. One of the biggest things that we really want to do is to be able to translate this knowledge into our local languages. I don't know about Immaculate, but for us in Uganda, we have so many languages. When you go to the north, different languages. Here in central, different languages. When you go to the west, so we think if we are able to reduce this conversation into our local languages, then we shall create that much needed awareness. But we are making great efforts right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stella, for your answer. And then I'll quickly jump to Femi. Femi, we have a question for you. Thanks for the inspiring presentation. Please help understand. There are some fundamental or structural weaknesses of Malabo Convention that warrants another framework on data protection harmonization rather than implementing Malabo Convention as it is. And so, Femi, I hope you get the question.
Yes, I get the sense of the question, and I agree really that I think for a number of reasons, or the output of Malabo, I would say that did not meet the moment. Number one, it has both the cybersecurity and data protection together. I think that must have started as a very bright idea, but it also has its own drawbacks, because cybersecurity has a lot of nuances that we thoroughly need to deal with in its own convention. Number two issue is also that the Malabo Convention, I think the greatest weakness is that it has not been properly communicated. It has not been, I mean, there is no private sector and academic championing of the Malabo Convention. So let's just be very practical here. We are Africans and we are in a family. The reason why there is so much buzz about data protection is because of the extraterritorial application of the GDPR. That awoke a lot of people to the fact that if you do not have a law on data protection within your country, you'll be forced to comply with the European law, and that is going to affect you. So as much as we may like to, shy away from it, if you make laws that are not contemplating business, contemplating the individual, contemplating the selfish interest of the individual and businesses, we may not be able to gain the traction that we need. So Malabo as a law is a nice write-up. It's good, it's even practicable, it can be worked on, but it has not been able to gain the traction it needed because there are no advocates, there is no marketing unique selling point that we can actually sell to the private sector and the academia out of the Malabo Convention. And I think that understanding is already well known. And that's the reason why the Policy Regulatory Initiative for Digital Africa a project was set up at the African Union Commission. And there is a working group a technical working group on data protection laws harmonization. And that effort, what we have done since 2020 March till late last year, was to identify the core principles, issues and nuances of various data protection laws and try to bring a baseline for everyone to be able to align with. And I think that is an approach that can work and I believe would work so long as we continue having these kinds of conversation. So, and also we should also not be always, intimidated by, oh, this is European model, Asian or American model. There are many models, and in fact, we can also generate an African model. One model I think that we should also be looking at closely is the Southeast Asian nations, where they have a confederated approach. That if we have a standard for everyone either coming to process data in Africa, because we have a lot of multinationals who take the data of Africans and they are using our data as their growth potential. That is what we've had extensive discussions and engagement with Twitter. We have seen the way they've been taking our data and all that. And these are the things they are using to actually become big because some of them are not even as relevant in their countries of origin as they are in Africa. So how do we now position ourselves? We can actually create a set of, you know, a kind of congregated set of principles and say, if you are processing anywhere in Africa, these are the things you must comply with, and this is, you know, the value you must add to the data protection authority in Africa. If we come together as a continent, rather than Uganda, rather than Ghana, rather than Nigeria, I am sure that they would definitely listen. If they could have listened to Nigeria, despite the fact that, I mean, you could just have gone, it's just 200 million people, but the implication of not listening to 1.3 billion people is way too much for them not to do. So I see a lot of opportunities for us to be able to, you know, to work on this. And then also the Malabo Convention, like I mentioned, should actually be improved upon, which is what we are currently working on and hoping that it would gain the traction that we expect it would gain. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Femi. Yes, I like the point on that some of these tech giants are actually becoming irrelevant in their own countries. Facebook is a very good example. It's really very, very relevant in Africa than elsewhere. And so thank you. And I also believe that together as Africa, we can actually bring data protection and privacy to these tech giants as well for the African continent. Thank you, Femi, for that. Now, I'll quickly move on to Patricia. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we are at the top of the hour. It's 11:06, but if you allow me to have some of these questions answered, it's very rare that we have such an expert panel of privacy experts, you know, and so just give us a few more, maybe 10 minutes if agreeable, and then we'll just finish up some of the questions. And also Patricia's been kind to type some of the answers to the Q&A, to the questions that were in the Q&A. So do please go there and check the responses to those questions. Also, if your questions are in the chat, please move them to the Q&A for us to be able to address them effectively. So Patricia, the question for you is, do you see Africa coming up with data governance policy framework to help define the regulatory framework? What is the response by UNSG to declare data as a public good?
I think these two subjects you pushed on right now has already commenced in earnest. The African data governance policy has already been developed and is being reviewed by some pilot countries. Ghana has applied to be the flagship country on data governance, and we are already negotiating with the Smart Africa to look at data governance as a flagship nation with the intention of establishing something that can be standardized across the region. Also, as far as our international partners are concerned, very soon they will have to reckon with us as a region that's on its feet about what we want to portray as the African perspective on the global standardized aspects of delivering our mandate. We want to put things in the African speak. I was quite excited that Olufemi touched on the working with these multinationals and the Twitters, and I personally invited Facebook to Ghana, and they did attend with a delegation to discuss social media, Facebook perspective as a subject on how it impacts African, especially since they turned the whole thing down for 7 hours some few months back. And we had a very interesting discussion, an in-depth discussion about their use of data in Africa. And I touched on subjects about the, when we talk about the extraterritorial requirements of the Act, Facebook as a social media platform is a non-jurisdictional territory where businesses reside and collect and use personal data. And we had serious discussions about how do we regulate that landscape, and how do we get the best out of the data that is on there without those online businesses abusing the rights of individuals without a challenge from any particular ecosystem. I challenge Facebook to be more accountable to its data subjects, to reach out to authorities such as that of Ghana, to educate professionals or experts in our authorities to help our citizens understand their use of social media, its implications and the impact on them. So I'm kind of pushing for these multinationals to be more accountable to us in different ways. And I'm glad Nigeria is doing its own thing concerning that as well. But more importantly, at the regional level, at the network level, I want to table some of these issues so that we act on behalf of the region rather than as individuals, because of course, the saying says, united we stand, divided we fall. How many African countries have been successfully able to challenge and to find these multinationals? We hear it every day. Last week also, I heard about a huge fine on Facebook from one of the European countries. And so they breach the act and the regulations in Europe and they get fined. What happens with the data of Africans in the African region? And I think if the network has the mandate of the other countries to speak on their behalf, we get some legal representation, we can begin to find these multinationals at the regional level. And we are looking at how that can be put together. And so the regional data governance policy and framework will achieve even more than just serving our individual states an internal focus on our internal data subject, but it will help us deal with our multinationals on a grander scale and to address the use of data in the at the local level more effectively. And I think that the network is pulling itself together to address some of these regional level challenges that we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia, to see the work that is being done on behalf of the region, on behalf of the continent by the network. And so I hope that answers the question. Thank you, Patricia. And now I'll move over to Immaculate. And there's two questions for you, Immaculate. And one is, how do you harmonize requirements for security with privacy in Africa? In Kenya, at every building, we're asked for personal data, full name, vehicle number, car registration number, etc. And then the other question, if you can just, let me give you both questions, is brilliant point. Privacy regulations are important to address discrimination issues. So how can we apply harmonized regulations when we have potentially conflicting regulations, in brackets, South African local regulations, BBE? Patricia, over to you.
You said Patricia.
Oh, sorry. Immaculate.
It's okay. I'll start with the last one. I think of course, in terms of harmonization of regulations, the challenge we probably are facing is because we are working backwards. If we had a global, a regional framework in terms of what is expected in as far as data protection is concerned, then it's easy for everybody to fit in. Now, we are finding countries then trying to find their own. I know Femi has spoken about some of the challenges in as far as the regional Malabo Convention is concerned. Nonetheless, that does not mean I think the best way to do this is to actually what Femi and the technical group are doing, to actually look at the different regulations across Africa, identify the contentious ones, the ones that are not contested, and then agree on at least a general one. That is how to create harmony. Because we already have existing ones, look at them, identify what is contested, what is not contested, and then come up with a general framework from across Africa. I think that is how I see us moving towards that. And of course, with the leadership of the regional platform, then we are able to push these as agendas as a continent. To the issue about an issue that we face a lot of questions in as far as collection of a lot of information in buildings in Kenya, and therefore affecting perhaps even other African countries. I think it's an issue of harmonization between a security requirement, because security security companies are required to collect that information. And it is a requirement by law brought about by the threat of terrorism. And therefore, that being there and going by the data protection, of course, they could argue they have a legitimate interest in as far as it's concerned, as one of the 8 reasons of processing data. The challenge for us, and I hear you, is how then do we ensure those people reduce the amount of information they are doing? And that is something we are looking at in terms of the office, to see how then we reduce the amount of information that is collected, or even when it's collected, it is safeguarded. It's work in the pipeline. And like Stella said, when you're new in office, Femi and Patricia have had the advantage of time. When you're new in office, you have too many balls in the air trying to balance. Nonetheless, we are trying as much as possible to catch up with speed in as far as the region is concerned. And just also to touch that we as Kenya have also applied to be part of the Smart Africa. And we believe that will give us an opportunity as an office to be able to, one, benchmark in as far as data protection is concerned, to give Kenya an opportunity to be out there in as far as being part of the regional and continental discussion in as far as data protection is concerned. Do you allow me to just touch on a few things that we have done, so that even if time runs out, we are not out of time?
Yes, I was actually about to ask you to do that.
Yeah, like Stella, I really want to congratulate Stella, because she's even already registering. For us, we expect registration of the data controllers to happen in the next 6 months. We've been in office for slightly over a year. And just to share some of the things we have, experiences of what we have managed to do, just highlighting on 3. One, of course, if you're in an institution and you don't have a strategy, it's an act of impossibility. It's always important to have a strategy. We will be launching our strategic plan as part of the Data Privacy Week later in the week. 2 is an issue of regulation. We finally have our regulations published. They'll be in front of Parliament. It has taken a year to have this conversation. They begin to unbundle the act, so that enforcement and those things, enforcement and compliance becomes an issue of a matter of course. And 3, one of the issues I would like to share, I'm happy Femi talked about the experience and also Patricia in terms of training data protection officers. As part of our awareness requirement, what we have done, we've signed on an MOU with the Kenya School of Government, because we also realized there was a gap in as far as awareness is concerned by public institutions. Starting next month, we will have our first training for public officers in as far as data protection is concerned. We will be launching, as part of also the Privacy Week, we will be launching the data protection curriculum in collaboration with Kenya School of Government, which is mandated to impact knowledge on public servant this week. So those are a milestone which I say we are working on. And finally, awareness. Stella also asked about what are we going to do about bundling this data protection, so that as many people are able to appreciate what it is. For priority as an office, we want to reduce the information on data protection. 1, make it palatable, so that we're not using too much legal jargon. 2, use both English and Kiswahili. For starters, we are running a small campaign in as far as data protection is concerned this week in our digital platform, and also on 1 or 2 stations, to begin the journey in as far as awareness is concerned on data protection. I will stop there. I know we'll have another opportunity to share, but I'm happy to hear what Femi is doing in as far as Nigeria is concerned. And I want to state that even as we see that as a challenge, it may not be possible to walk into all the data controllers and data processors. So a model like what Nigeria has embraced is something we are looking at. So being able to bring on board people who can help us in making sure that they are helping institutions comply as far as data protection is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Immaculate, for that answer. And Femi, do you have any comments?
Yeah, well, just to begin to wrap up, first, I would say that there is a lot of opportunity for us to, I've learned a lot, I mean, even from the conversations we've had this morning, and to also say that really number one, as Africa, we need to band together. That is a no-brainer. We need to band together, but also, I would also say that for us to have a sustainable build-up, we need to involve our academia. The academics needs to be very much more involved. And the way we as data protection regulators can do that is to give them, is for us to do like what Immaculate just mentioned. You have a strategic plan. Academics can actually study a strategic plan, critique it, see how that would work. And for any other country that wants to have a strategic plan, they can look at that and see the criticisms, and it builds, we are building a body of knowledge. So I would say that beyond what the data protection authorities are doing, which is very good, if we could also look at having a standing body, like Europe used to have Article 29 Working Party, I think 29 Working Party, which is now an office where research and consultations, efforts are ongoing in a sustainable manner. It's not just an ad hoc group of persons, but people who are the researchers who are looking at various countries and seeing what is being done. And we are promoting these things on an ongoing basis. It will really go a long way to help us. So finally, I'll mention that, well, the good thing, one of the things that I was the pioneer data protection desk officer for data protection regulation in Nigeria. And one of the things I'm very happy and proud that we've been able to do in the last 2-3 years is publishing an annual report. As a matter of fact, and we learned the latest report that was published by Mauritius, I drew a lot of inspiration from it. And from then, I think we are the only country that have published 2 consecutive performance reports on data protection. What this has done for us is that we are seeing where we are making progress. We are seeing where we are not doing as well. And it is giving international visibility to what we are doing. So if you are coming to, if you want to understand what is happening in Nigeria, all you need is just to look at the reports, and then you can be able to ask the right questions. I think that is also something that we'll be engaging. I'll be engaging with Madam Patricia. As a continent, could we be looking at a continental performance report for data protection? And that would help us to be able to scale, because the more knowledge we have about what we are doing, the better we're able to scale, rather than knee-jerk approaches and just doing things that are not as coordinated as possible. Well, there's not so much time to say everything, but I'm really glad also to mention that, as a matter of fact, in a matter of minutes, we are starting our global press conference by about 20-something minutes from now. Tomorrow, we are having a webinar on data. Largest national privacy class of data controllers and data, and data. So we have had over 100 schools adopted, and all across the secondary schools, they are going to be teaching privacy and cybersecurity. Implications of privacy. And Friday is our Global Privacy Day. We're going to be having debates, quiz, and so many other things, the ministers and all that will be. So it's a whole lot that we are trying to do, and we'll continuously engage with one another to build our capacity. But I really appreciate the opportunity to have been part of this wonderful panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Femi. I think what you've just said addresses the fact that in as much as there's interest in data protection and privacy in Africa, most scholars debate that and argue and say that the literature on this topic in Africa is still deficient, patchy, and growing at a very slow pace. And so what you've just said addresses what is being done to make sure that there's enough information, literature, and knowledge on privacy and data protection in Africa. Thank you so much, Femi, for that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have been made to know that we actually have the webinar is 1 hour and 30 minutes, so we have 7 minutes, and we have a video from the DPC Commissioner, Data Protection Commissioner Mauritius. There's been a lot of topics, a lot of experiences from Mauritius that have been hinted on or talked about from Mauritius, especially how the African data protection authorities are enforcing the laws adequately. So we have a video from the DPC Mauritius. So allow me just play it quickly, and then we'll close the webinar with just a few remarks for that. So just do that in 2 seconds. So I hope my screen is on.
Dear colleagues and participants, good morning. I'm Rudisha Madhav, Data Protection Commissioner for the Republic of Mauritius. As you're aware, Mauritius has been an early adopter of data protection standards, and although it was a slow process at first to kickstart operations, it has been a leading advocate of an open approach to data protection, one that facilitates safe flows of data. The Mauritius Data Protection Act of 2017, which came into force on 15 January 2018, has incorporated principles of the EU GDPR and Council of Europe Convention 108+. The new Data Protection Act has revolutionized the whole data protection landscape in Mauritius with new obligations and increased accountability of controllers and processors. Data subjects have also been provided with enhanced rights under the Act. It is comprehensive and covers both public and private sectors. As controllers or processors, organizations also have responsibilities to continuously improve their mode of operations by putting privacy and protection of individuals' information at the forefront of their business activities. The office operates under the aegis of the Ministry of Information Technology, Communication and Innovation. As stipulated in the Data Protection Act, in the discharge of its functions, the office acts with complete independence and impartiality and is not subject to the control or direction of any other person or authority. The Data Protection Act also provides for criminal penalties which are serious in nature. As prosecution is involved, and appeals on decisions of the Data Protection Commissioner are also a current feature in Mauritius. Any person who commits an offense under the Act for which no specific penalty has been provided in the law, or who otherwise contravenes this Act, shall, on conviction, be liable to a fine not exceeding 200,000 rupees and to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years. In September 2020, Mauritius was the first African country to have signed and ratified the Council of Europe Convention 108+. This convention provides a robust and flexible multilateral legal framework to facilitate the flow of data across borders whilst providing effective safeguards when personal data are being processed. We have an ambitious reputation to earn Mauritius as a country that provides adequate safeguards on data protection. The office has also started discussions with the European Commission on the adequacy assessment procedure. African states pursue programs and activities aimed at accelerating regional integration and cooperation arrangements on the continent. For the enlarged African market to be fully effective, it should be accompanied by harmonization of policies, legal and regulatory frameworks in general. The AU Commission, within the framework of the implementation of the Policy and Regulation Initiative for Digital Africa, the PREDA project has developed a new methodology and tool to measure the extent of harmonization of policies, legislations, and regulations across the continent. The strategic objective is to create an enabling environment that paves the way for the establishment of an African digital common market. Data protection and localization was identified as one amongst the areas of common interest that require continental harmonization. The AU Commission developed a monitoring and evaluation prototype with associated harmonization indicators. The prototype was tested in Mauritius, and the Data Protection Office submitted all the necessary information. The AU Commission is now examining the inputs and soon will submit a rating for Mauritius. Four main challenges for data protection in Africa. First, harmonization of domestic laws with international laws, such as EU GDPR and Council of Europe Convention 108+. Harmonization facilitates data flows and trade between countries, whilst also ensuring an adequate level of protection to individuals. In this increasingly digital world, cross-border data flows are the lifeblood of international trade, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Trust in the security of cross-border data flows will increase as the continent adopts harmonized privacy and data protection policies and regulations in line with international standards. The Malabo Convention, which seeks to create a continental data protection framework, needs also to be reviewed to be in line with international standards such as GDPR and Convention 108+. The Malabo Convention is thus a starting point for African countries to kickstart their data protection framework implementation. In addition, the harmonization of laws brings regulatory collaboration. Cooperation among different data protection authorities has become essential due to the globalization of business operations, which cuts across several jurisdictions. Data protection authorities will be able to develop intra-continental and, when necessary, international mechanisms for cooperation to facilitate an effective enforcement landscape and data protection. This could be by way of joint investigations, knowledge sharing and notifications, and other forms of mutually beneficial assistance. The Data Protection Office has signed a cooperation agreement with the Data Protection Authority of Burkina Faso. The office has also expressed its interest to engage into similar cooperation agreements with other data protection authorities of the African continent and is currently awaiting the response. Second, dependence of data protection authorities. The absence of full independence of data protection authorities to discharge their duties limits considerably enforcement. Third, financial constraints. Lack of funding to exercise statutory functions limits the capability of data protection regulators to ensure people's data protection rights. A poorly funded DPA also lacks the requisite resources to employ the best brains, conduct audits, investigate, issue sanctions effectively, and carry other statutory functions. This could be partly responsible for why some countries have yet to set up their data protection authorities. Fourth and final, inadequacy and lack of implementation of laws. Sometimes laws are passed, but some countries are yet to set up their data protection authorities. The absence of the regulator to enforce the law leaves data protection rights unprotected. Implementing data protection is a process that takes time, and we have to start now so that one day we can see a digital single market or common data space in most of African countries. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. That was a video recording from the Data Protection Commissioner, Mauritius, and I really gave a background of Mauritius's experience, but also talked about the very many issues or challenges that Africa is facing from the data protection authorities, from financial constraints, independence, making sure that these authorities are actually independent, and of course, harmonization of domestic laws and international laws, and of course, back to the Malabo Convention, that it needs to be reviewed, like we had talked about, and also continental harmonization. We'd like to say a great thank you to Mrs. Madhab for that video. So if you do have any comments and questions, please put them in the chat. And now, before we end, I would like to give each of our panelists 1 minute to actually just say a brief take home for us. So I'll start with Patricia, if you're still on.
Yes, thank you so much, Uganda, for this very fruitful discussion and deliberation into the future of data protection for Africa and for Uganda. It's a very good practice for us to come together, to educate each other, to reassure each other that we are on the right path and that we're thinking along the same lines, compare notes, to also share ideas. Today, I've bought into the idea that Olufemi has produced concerning the annual reporting. And we have to report internally within the nation, but I think it's good on a regional level to compile reports and to be able to compare performances at the regional scale. So I will table it at the regional level. I think in so doing, it's all within the effort as a region to pull each other with us to be delivering on the same scale. I also listened carefully to Judicia's report from Mauritius. It's very encouraging that we are all looking towards the same point of harmonizing the rules, overcoming the challenges, and also developing a better Africa perspective and a regional solution to our challenges. So I thank all of you for the opportunity for hearing me, and to hope that we do more of these meetings, perhaps not to just wait for the Global Week to do it, but to invite each other more regularly and periodically to touch base on our state level data protection. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Immaculate, you could have your parting shots or remarks.
Thank you, Stella. Perhaps, Stella, what you don't know is that I'm an old girl of Makerere, so I'm very happy to be part of this conversation.
I'm very happy.
So I really do want to appreciate Stella and for putting this quickly together, because it is really the way to go in as far as collaboration is concerned. Two, I want to emphasize matters data protection. We cannot ignore conversation in the continental level, because if we look at the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, and when you look at what is the potential of Africa of 1.2 billion, it means that we have to get our act together at an African level, so that others, we are not being set for agenda, we are the ones setting the agenda. And on that note, I want to really appreciate Patricia. Since she took over the network, we've seen robust discussion, and also her calling us to share information about what each one of us is doing, any challenges. Please keep up the good work. Finally, as I conclude, thank you, Femi, for sharing what you're doing in Nigeria, and particularly how you've been able to get people to help you walk the journey of compliance. And as I said, awareness, and I'm happy that this Privacy Day, this Privacy Week has given us an opportunity to create awareness, because only when we create awareness will other people be able to appreciate what data privacy is, and how then we are able to safeguard and ensure that business is being done in a better way in Africa. Thank you very much, and certainly looking forward to the remaining webinars. Asante.
Asante sana, Immaculate. Thank you so much. Then we'll move over to Femi for your parting shots.
Thank you very much, Stella. Thank you, Patricia, Immaculate, and all the other persons that have been on this webinar. I think it had been a very fantastic way for us to start the week. And I am very confident of what lies ahead for us as Africa, as a continent. And some of the things, the vibes we are getting from the various countries indicate that we are moving in the right direction. It's also important for us to realize and understand that data protection is not an end in itself. It is a means to an end. The new Africa that we are looking at is an Africa that is digital, that is, developed digitally, that can contribute, effectively to the global economy. So this data protection is one of the tools that we are using to be able to project our strategy. So if we are able to get data protection right, I'm sure that the other regulatory frameworks, we can also be able to put them together to achieve our goals. And we need to do it in an inclusive manner. We need to carry academia along, carry the business community along, carry government along. And I'm sure that with the kind of leadership we have a very fantastic, I am very proud. I'm personally proud of Madam Patricia Poku, and I think it's worth mentioning that I was a campaign manager. So, and I think I should put it on my CV now.
Now we know. Now we know.
Yes. So, and she's doing a very fantastic job, and I'm hoping that within the next 1 or 2 years, we're going to see a very, very different Africa, particularly from the perspective of data protection. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Femi. And I didn't know you were campaign manager for Patricia. Yeah, I think we all now know whom to hire next time we have elections. Yes, thank you so much. I'll invite our host, Stella, to give us closing remarks. Stella, over to you.
I've been laughing because I do remember that contest, and we are happy, Patricia, that you're in that seat and doing us proud and doing very well. Wow. I did not want this conversation to end. Very interesting conversation, a lot to learn. My notebook is full because, as Femi said, we needn't reinvent the wheel. Given that we've started late, it is important that we utilize those strategies that have worked for other countries to be able to leapfrog and do our country justice, or our citizens or residents justice. I want to thank the participants who have stayed with us throughout this webinar. I hope you've learned something. As an office, we'll keep this conversation going. I want to thank the panelists. My sister Immaculate, thank you so much. My brother Femi, I don't know the equivalent of Amazon. Thank you so much. My president, Patricia, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, participants. I look forward to more discourse. I'll try as much as possible because we are all having engagements this week. Immaculate, I noticed that you're launching your strategic plan. I hope to be there. That is the beauty of technology. But as we use it, let's make sure that we use it safely and that everyone who is using technology is protected. Thank you so much. I wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you, Stella. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us, and have a very great week ahead. Be blessed. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good day.
Thank you
Enjoy
so
your
much.
week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Happy
Enjoy
Data
yours
Protection
too.
Week.